Oh, hello, video request time. It's 3:20 in the morning on April 9th now. I'm doing this shirtless because I'm a professional athlete now, and professional athletes always do their videos shirtless because it's sexy. So, this video is from a Japanese woman. No, for sure, that's the truth. I really did get a request from a Japanese woman, and this is it. What do you think about the current outburst of transgender community claiming their rights, which they deserve, just like any race, culture, or person should, but then taking it too far, especially in many universities, leveraging their positions that make others in the university, such as professors, do things because they are trans and that they are afraid to not do because people might think they are transphobic. For instance, trans community were telling a professor of how to be respectful to trans people, and he was listening to them while delivering a speech, and they were cheering him on, but that just seemed wrong to many, as if they were taking advantage of this position to make him act in certain ways. Another more concrete example is there has been a lot of fights from SJWs in universities forcing people to call them by their preferred pronouns. As standard he, she is not okay for them, but renowned and respected professors such as Jordan Peterson has fought back, saying that it's free will to use whatever language you may want, and that the trans request to get official rule legislation for us to be required to call them by their specific pronouns is taking it too far, as they will go against free will and have bad long-term consequences. It's okay to be respectful and decide to call someone X or pronoun, or they and them if they preferred. But the problem is making it an official thing is very bad for free will and free speech, and it leads down to a bad path. Finally, also, the outburst of trans or related communities who are claiming that gender is a non-binary thing, and that is science, where in fact it is actually not. It's a social system thing where genders are tied to things such as wearing dresses, makeup, etc. It's a complicated topic because I do believe trans people who have been born into the wrong bodies are not lying, but it's not for certain, and allowing them to make too abrupt decisions and take hormones, especially when they are young, to change sex might have bad consequences for them in the future. Signs that you are feminine when your sex is male does not necessarily mean you are trans, even if it's happening all the time. You may be pressured by trans people coming out a lot these days and read stuff online and decide you must be female, especially when they claim it's science that gender can be non-binary and easily depends on what you identify with, when it's actually not in tune with actual science as reports say. What do you think about all this? Do you think gender is really whatever you feel like identifying and that is actually scientifically correct, or those are based on social constructs which the world has grown accustomed to? Strongly recommended you check these couple things out if you aren't well versed in these topics. It will catch you up on everything, and they are highly rated and enjoyable to listen to or watch. These two famous evolutionary biologists go on Joe Rogan Experience podcast for an amazing interview. I highly recommend you check out their talk, even if just for the first 10 minutes or so. It keeps getting better and shows you the situation of the current day. And this Quora link for some details of the two sides of the arguments of gender sex roles and what the left and right extremists claim to think. Okay. Okay, unfortunately I'm doing this video really high, and I know you didn't want me to do the video high. I remember hearing once. And also, I did watch those videos, and I did look at that article, but the problem is I did it a long time ago, like when I first got the request, and then I waited. And then I didn't realize that. I forgot when I read this, so maybe I should have listened to it again, but I think I'm going to go ahead and do the video now. Sorry for not doing my research. So, so that YouTube video was Joe Rogan talking to the two married evolutionary biologists for about 3 hours or something, I think, or an hour and a half. I remember I watched like half. I watched like 45 minutes or something, a while. And I think maybe they were even Canadian, and I remember them being politically interested in the subject, invested, and were against the transgender people. And they were against it so much that they started to aggravate me, and they started to come across as bigots. And they came across to me as people who use their scientific specialty to then give them authority to talk about philosophical stuff. And it seems smug. It was the same vibe that Jordan Peterson gives out. I don't like Jordan Peterson, although I did find him interesting to listen to. You know, he shows up all over my internet there. And I was watching him talk, and yeah, I want to talk about Jordan Peterson a little bit. Here's this core link. Why do some liberals criticize conservatives for being anti-science, yet believing science shows that there are more than two genders? Okay. Okay. So, yeah, let me tell you about what I think about Jordan Peterson. My first impression of Jordan Peterson was of this, yeah, he's a college professor, but he strikes me as the worst kind of college professor. I have a college degree and English education. I got kicked out of the education, but I took all the classes, so it was 4.5 years. Yeah, and there were those professors who are just, they like to talk at the classroom, and they think that they're smarter than everybody else, and but they're not that smart, and that's the idea. That's the vibe. He reminded me, but yeah, when I look into his eyes, he's just another bigot, and I don't think he's very smart. I can't give any examples right now. I'm too high. I'm going to start doing videos sober pretty soon, but yeah, his logic train leads him. He'll quote, you know, Nietzsche and Plato and stuff, and then he'll just go off the deep end and say something totally crazy, like there was some kind of a connection there. So yeah, that's showing he's not very smart. I don't think he's very smart. There was a video where he uploaded saying, "What's my IQ?" and he said he couldn't remember, but he took a test once and it was in the 160s. That's like super genius. He's not that smart. He reminds me of Stephen Molyneux, who quotes a lot of historical facts and tidbits in order to to try to steer you in a certain direction of thought, and which makes him come across really smart. But it's not really that hard. You know, all you do is prepare. You just go in history and cherry pick. You know. So So my opinions of Jordan Peterson's interest in the transgender thing is that it's a waste of time. There are so many things that we could be talking about. To talk about that is a waste. It's like it's like there's a robber robbing your bank or something, robbing your house, and you go and you see somebody and the person's trying to maintain your attention on them so that you don't look around and see that somebody's robbing the bank. It's almost that's the impression I get from Jordan Peterson's and those people's interest in transgender stuff because it doesn't mean anything um, legally because we already treat men and women have the same laws this for both men and women. They're treated the same. So to create all these other genders um, doesn't have any real consequence. So we shouldn't worry about it. If people want to, I mean, I haven't read anything about what's going on here. So they're saying that there's multiple genders. So yeah, if somebody wants to be like a hermaphrodite gender or whatever, and um, let them do that. It's just a fad that is going to come and go. People stick with whatever is more comfortable for them, and they do that. Now let me tell you what aliens have to say about it, because I was listening to Barbara Marciniak a couple weeks ago. Barbara Marciniak is the original channeler. The original channeler was, I guess the original channelers in the 1800s, you had like Alice Bailey and Edgar Casey, but the original channeler who really had interesting stuff to say in modern times was um, uh, Jane Roberts, who channeled Seth. But then after that, like in the early 90s or mid 90s, there was Barbara Marciniak, Keepers, Bringers of the Dawn. I read that, and it was talking about like a utopia, new world, and there were the aliens from the Pleiadians telling us about it. And yeah, it got me thinking about aliens, and I enjoyed the book. But I was listening to her new stuff a lot of years later. I think she just recently started doing videos, and where you can watch her in her channel, and she's gotten a lot more negative since then. She's kind of like a crazy conspiracy theorist or person, like focusing on don't go in the woods or you'll get kidnapped and sent to a concentration camp on Mars from evil aliens who are all over. And that there's a war going on between the reptilians and the Pleiadians and stuff. But they asked her about the transgenders, and she was saying, and she didn't want to explain it at all. She just, but she said, now, do I believe Barbara Marciniak? I think Barbara Marciniak is, I think in her old age, her human filter is starting to make her a little bit cynical, and she's not as much of a channeler as I thought she was before. I think people's own personalities get in the way a lot, but as long as somebody's opening people's minds, then you know that, and exciting people, then you know that there's some truth to it. So yeah, I do believe Marciniak in the end. I just don't believe in the concentration camps. And if there are, this world is filled with people who are kind of have a propensity for slavery, don't want to think and don't want to take any responsibility, or, and aren't that smart. And the only way that I could picture in my head that that's actually happening is if there's just a lot of people who that world is real. And but I think I think it's more likely that she's just making it up out of her old personal, paranoia. Somebody asked her a question about fracking. They're like, "What do you think about the fracking?" She's like, "They're not making any money with fracking, so it's just going to go under." And she's just, that doesn't make any sense. otherwise they wouldn't be doing it and making money. So, but anyway, she said, as the Palladians in her trance state, that that transgender is not good because it takes people away from the family structure. If you're going to have a healthy society, the society is formed within the family, and so people believe that, or she says, yeah, that there's less people if people could start to be raised in unions that are not as tightly woven together and as permanent, and and that will take people away from their sense of community in the long run, and damage our culture. Some conservative, it's similar to some conservatives' belief that if both of your parents are male or female, then you won't have as good parenting. There was a video that the Young Turks did a year ago or so, where a woman who was raised by two women said that she was against it because she didn't feel like she had balance in her life. But my opinion of that is that people's relationships are just as long in homosexual relationships. I think I haven't looked at the statistics though, as heterosexual relationships. People get married in homosexual relationships and stay together. So there's really no difference in family cohesion. The only difference that you could say that makes sense is that you don't have a male influence, but you have male influence in society. So that would make up for it. It's not that big of a deal. It's kind of like somebody growing up without a sister. So what? You didn't have a sister. So I'm not against transgenders or homosexual marriages. So was that Barbara Marciniak talking, or was that the Palladians talking? Well, for it to make sense to me, I can't talk for too long, or this isn't going to save. I should have done this with my video camera. If this is over an hour, then it's not going to save. Yeah, the only way that would actually turn into reality is like if everybody does it, and or somehow as it turns out that the bond between homosexual people isn't as great. So yeah, I think that's Barbara Marciniak making that up. But and then I read another channel book, Raw, from, I can't remember, it's some woman who was trans channeler, and then she her husband wrote the book down. He ended up going crazy, but they asked them a question about why are people transgender, and they said the Venusians, these are people who live on Venus in another dimension. They said that people become homosexual homosexual and transgender. I think they were talking about homosexual, but it's related. Transgender and homosexual, I think, is related. When they grow up in a very densely populated urban environment, and there's something else, but I can't remember. So, which may cause people to lose their identity. So, for people, one way I could imagine homosexuality and transgenderism to be bad is if it, like the principle of something being unnatural is being bad. For example, like Darwin's survival of the fittest, you want everything to be natural and in tune with nature. That's how species survive and adapt. But and that's what people say. Homosexuals can't have babies, so that's not right. But we have a society. Oh, and I think that's what it was. There's overpopulate. What the Venusians said. Yeah, densely urban environments that are overpopulated. So if we have population, like plenty of population, then you could look at homosexuals as being a solution to that because they don't create their own, and they could then adopt the surplus, and so then it's natural. You know, like you need to look at homosexuals and transgenders as natural for the reason that they exist. Anything that exists is natural. Unless you're going to start saying that it's caused by a certain chemical that they're putting in the water, like Alex Jones types of conspiracies, making the frogs gay and stuff like that, making people gay with the same stuff that makes the frogs gay. Um, um, yeah, that people aren't that sophisticated, okay, in terms of conspiracy theories, and there's no reason to do that. People do that kind of stuff. It's a lot simpler, and it's to make money. you know, like somebody would whack some other guy so he could steal his money. Not to, you wouldn't poison the water to make everybody gay, to make your own rich people richer or something like that. So, anyways, how did I get on that? I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so people, what makes me wonder is why people are so gravitated towards useless drama, like somebody like Jordan Peterson. I'll turn this video into about Jordan Peterson. He's a historian. There's so much stuff to be interested in and to be talking about, so many interesting stories to be telling. And then you could argue, there's plenty of historical stuff to argue, different political ways to spend money, for example, So I think it's just that they're not true historians, They're just cherry picker historians, but pretending to be historians. That's why my biweekly history test will solve that problem, because it's designed to prove whether or not you're a historian, because it chooses random decades from history to talk about that you don't have control over, so you have to know it. And if you don't, you're exposed. So, anyways, let me run through really quickly. Let's talk about this second article here that I was sent to, and I think I did have the computer read it to me, but I don't remember. But why do some liberals criticize conservatives for being anti-science yet believing science shows that there are more than two genders? Okay, so liberals like to criticize conservatives for being anti-science because they like to deny climate change, I think, and also the religious ones like survival of the fittest and evolution. And so then that means that they should then agree that there's only two genders, because scientifically that there's only two genders. Now I remember if it was Jordan Peterson talking about it, there are a few animals that are kind of hermaphrodite, but I think then he said that maybe there was one sex that was dominant or whatever. Yeah, well, my opinion is that yes, there are only two genders. Okay, like if somebody's born as a man and then they decide to become a woman, yes, scientifically they're a man. But since they decide to become a woman, now they're a woman. It's really that simple, because we have the science to do all of the changing with the surgeons. So yes, there are two genders. I mean, well, it's actually both. There are more than two genders, and there are two genders.
It's both the same. You just have to change the way that you look at it. There's two genders, the way that God made it, but then we make more genders because we're humans and we can do whatever the fuck we want. Humans can fly, we can swim underwater, we can run, we can turn ourselves into space people. We can do whatever we want. We can become little cyborg people. So I think in the future there will be a lot more interesting things to talk, subjects along this line that will have a lot more to do with actual money, how money is made, or it'll have real life consequences. Like for example, what if somebody decides that? Well, actually, we have it now already with the corporations. Corporations are considered people. They can they have the ability to they have all the rights to look after themselves. I need to sober up. But yeah, they have they're protected and the way that they're structured with stockholders and everything to only look after themselves. But anyways, sorry for being so high on this one. Okay, so yeah, those evolutionary biologists, their logic didn't make sense. I mean, they're like give you a cute little biology lesson, and then they're like, yeah, so stop being transgender. There's a transgender down at the subway I work at. So what do I think personally about transgenders and gays? Okay, I think about gays is that gays are just people who people. I think people can switch sexes. And so it's somebody who is another sex in their last life, and this is their first time in another sex, and they decided, but said that they're kind of hermaphrodite, which means I'm gay. And maybe that's the same thing as cause for the transgender. But I think another reason is to curb population. But there's another reason, and it's to force people to open their minds and to realize that we need to not talk about those stupid subjects and to focus on stuff that really matters. So I would love to hear Jordan Peterson. Maybe I'll challenge him one day. I should challenge him to do the biweekly history test. That's true academics. Because then that way, if the test tells him to do the 1620s, he can tell us all about the psychiatrists from the 1620s, So, okay. So, now up here at the top, you were saying that, let's go from the top and just skim really through, make sure I answered all your stuff. Okay. The current outburst of transgender community claiming their rights, which they deserve, like any race. Okay, but then taking it too far. Okay, well, like in universities, as far as transgenderism in universities, I think that you need to let people be as freaky as they can be. Because the more wild and creative people are, and then that makes them the more creative when they're older and less closed off and less closed-minded and pessimistic. If people become super wild and creative and stuff in university, and then they're shut down by by judgmental people or, judgmental professors, then they're gonna get paranoid about it and resentful and, back off. There was this a documentary I saw by the Johnson & Johnson heir, Jamie Johnson. It's called like Rich and Famous or whatever. You should see it on YouTube about rich kids. They interviewed Ivanka Trump and some other rich kids, and this guy, Jamie Johnson's dad, actually did a documentary about rich and poor in South Africa, where he was trying to figure out, a way to fix it, and he wanted to interview his dad for this documentary, and the father didn't want to talk about it, and was just said on camera, "I don't have an answer for you. I don't want to talk about it," and just went away. So that's kind of like what you could do to people. That's the effect you could have on people. You could make people, even though they're still physically and mentally sound, you can scare them off into their holes and not want to participate in the discussion if you try to shut them down when they're super all over the place when they're younger. So that whole transgenderism is another one of those things. You just need to let people dress up and play whatever they want. That's what college is all about. Taking it too far, well, I think what you're talking about here, like there was a professor talking. I saw a video where Jordan Peterson was talking in front of a bunch of kids outside, and they were like jeering him, and he's getting angry, saying, "Let me finish, let me finish." Well, he should let them jeer him and hang out. Like that's what you're doing. If he has to be somewhere, he should have gone there on a time when he didn't have to be leaving. It always bothers me when people don't give the press any time, because people always are trying to clamor for attention. So once people get attention, now they get too much. People who are in the spotlight should give to the spotlight. If they don't want to give, then they shouldn't be in the spotlight, because there's plenty of other people who are willing to take that spotlight. It's like people clamor to take the spotlight and then they push it away because, that's the whole, it's like, wealth discrepancy. Well, they have spotlight discrepancy. So yeah, I don't think, but yeah, they were just trying to have a conversation. So making him act in a certain way, I don't know. I don't remember anything like that. I remember hearing this one speech from a professor inside a auditorium. There was this one guy, and I think he was a white kid, but he had a Saudi Arabian headdress on, those red and white checkered headdresses, and he goes, "Well, if you're wearing that terrorist hat," and everybody's like, "What? No, it's a symbol of a culture." And so people are getting too racist. It's just a symbol of a culture. It's the symbol of the tribe out there in Saudi Arabia, and if a lot of people from that tribe happen to become terrorists, well, it's unfortunate, but you can't. It's bad to lump it together, because there's people. If you lump it together, think how you would feel. There's normal people in everywhere in the world, and so that guy's just being negative, and that's the main problem, I think, in the world today, is people are freaking out and just looking at the negative part of other people. We actually have to make an effort to be tolerant of people who aren't like you. We have to write it in our laws. If we're a pure democracy, we all choose to fight and to make laws against certain people, because we're all so easily brainwashed by people who have propaganda power. We're all, like, people are followers. It's crazy. So let's see another company example. SJWs and forcing them to be preferred pronouns, he, she. Okay, so it's okay to be respectful and decide to call someone an extra pronoun and then see if they prefer, but the problem is making it official if it's bad for free will and free speech, and it leads down to the bad path. Okay, are you saying that making it... because I've heard people on the right claim that, yeah, people on the left try to hurt their free speech. Yeah, forcing somebody to call somebody he, she, or whatever instead of a he, that doesn't hurt your free speech. Hurting your free speech is when your videos get deleted, or your channel, and you can't upload to YouTube anymore, your channel gets deleted, or your website's taken down, okay? Or your comments maybe all the time are taken off of blogs, but by the government, but making somebody call somebody else, that's like saying, pronounce my name right, god damn it, my name's Fernando, not Fer, or my name's Fernando, not Fernando, you know? So yeah, if that's what answered your question, I don't know if that's exactly no. I know it can be kind of hard to write in another language that's not native to you. So, okay, I think I've talked enough. Yeah. All right, thanks for the request. That was a long one. Peace out.